Welcome to our High Holiday webinar. I give you our host, the CEO of the Jewish Community Relations Council, Gideon Taylor. Gideon?
Hi, thank you, David. And thank you all for joining today. Today, as many of you know, the second day of Elul. So I think the sound of shofar is a good awakening for us that the high holidays are coming and coming early this year. So not so many weeks ago, most synagogues were planning to return to something like normal. And obviously we're planning to have meaningful in-person Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur services, with other synagogues planning Zoom services now, and obviously additional outdoor services were in the mix. We all know we're not in charge and we're all adjusting to the changing times. Fortunately, the Community Security Initiative, which is a joint program of UJA Federation and JCRC-New York, is here to help. So during my tenure initially on the JCRC board and now as the CEO, I've had an opportunity to be so impressed by the team of security experts that we have who are working tirelessly to protect our institutions, our people. And we're very grateful to our partner UJA Federation for their critical role in making this happen. So the first presentation today is what is called a SITREP, or situational report, which will run through the current challenges to the security of the community. This year, we've seen, unfortunately, a spike in all forms of anti-Semitism. And we think it's important for us, for you, to understand what dangers lurk in order to better understand how we as a community can best protect ourselves. We're very fortunate today to have Mitch Silver, who's the Executive Director of the Community Security Initiative, and Rebecca Fetterman, who's the Intelligence Analyst for CSI, who are going to share their insights with us. Mitch was NYPD's Director of Intelligence Analysis and is an international authority on terrorism and extremism. Rebecca is embedded with the Center on Extremism at the ADL. She has earned the respect of her colleagues at NYPD, the FBI, and other agencies. I've had a chance to spend time with both of them. And we are really, really fortunate to have people of this tremendously high caliber working 24/7 to protect us. So I'm going to turn it over to Mitch and Rebecca.
Thanks so much, Gideon. Good afternoon, everyone. As Gideon mentioned, we're coming into the high holidays in the wake of some difficult weeks and months here in New York area. In the first half of 2021, anti-Semitic incidents in New York City were up 69% to 113 incidents this year over 67 during the first half of 2020. And in fact, we know that these hate crimes against Jews in New York City surged in May, reversing what had been a fall from last year. And there were 26 incidents against anti-Semitic hate crime from May 2nd to May 23rd. What were some of these type of incidents? Well, some of them were harassment, some of them were vandalism, some of them were assault. Many of us are all familiar with the terrible attack on the young man who was wearing a kippah as he emerged from the subway on 47th Street. Another graphic incident was an attack with a firework in the Diamond District. Another incident that maybe didn't get as much attention because it wasn't in Midtown, but occurred in Brooklyn when three men hopped out of a car outside of a synagogue in Borough Park just before Shabbat and attacked two teenagers, yelling "Free Palestine" and "Kill the Jews" before assaulting one of them and putting them in a chokehold before fleeing. Why do we tell you this? We tell you this just for your awareness. We're not trying to scare you, but we want you to understand what types of threats we're dealing with. And we'll go into that a little bit more as we move through the presentation. But there's not only bad news out there, there's some good news. Working closely with the Community Security Service, who you'll hear from later this afternoon, and the NYPD, CSI, our team contributed to the arrest of an individual who had been vandalizing synagogues in Riverdale in April. Also, working closely with NYPD, the Community Security Initiative contributed to the arrest of one of the individuals involved with the firecracker attack on 47th Street in the Diamond District. And even more recently, we've been working closely with NYPD as they arrested an individual in Staten Island who was posting anti-Semitic stickers throughout the area. So there have been some good news on that front, and I'm proud that CSI has played a role in some of these. Now, where are the threats coming from? I would say the threats are coming from three primary directions. During the height of the war between Israel and Hamas, we saw pro-Palestinian Muslim New Yorkers whose activism turned to violent anti-Semitism. And that was unfortunate. And that really explained much of the spike in May. But we've also seen neighborhood anti-Semitism, the type that we often see in Brooklyn. Sometimes it's crime related, sometimes it's not, but often directed at visible Jews in Brooklyn neighborhoods. And then also we're concerned about white supremacist anti-Semitism. I mentioned the situation on Staten Island. We also had a Confederate flag hung in the Holocaust Museum downtown in Manhattan. We've seen stickering, and we've seen Patriot Front banner drops in Westchester. So those are the three primary sort of vectors the anti-Semitism has come at us here in New York. However, what happens in the real world, we often have an inkling of by virtue of looking online. And we're very fortunate to have a threat intelligence analyst, Rebecca Fetterman, who I'm going to introduce now, who's constantly searching the online environment for threats that might appear in the real world against our community. And with that, let me turn it over to Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. So as Mitch mentioned, basically what we're seeing is that the online activity mirrors directly what is happening in the real world. So just as Mitch mentioned, we're seeing a lot of activism from stickering campaigns and banner drops. That is mirrored exactly what we're seeing online. You're seeing a lot of encouragement to go out, they call it, and doing in real life activism. And they are sending templates of anti-Semitic stickers and flyers and banners that individuals should then go out and put around town. You know, we've seen recently the yellow star being anti-Semitically repurposed on the east side just, I think, this past week in terms of the anti-vaccination movement. So that's a lot of what we're seeing in the online spaces, particularly from the white supremacist, neo-Nazi anti-Semitism movements. And then, as Mitch also mentioned, you have your anti-Israel, anti-Zionist activists, and a lot of, again, what's mirrored in real life. You have these protests that are increasingly exhibiting rhetoric that justifies violence. You're seeing that online as well. They're posting anti-Semitic, anti-Israel sentiments, and they're just getting, you know, hundreds of likes on these posts. So I feel, you know, what I'm doing online and then escalating it up to make sure, let's say I find an Instagram post that's advertising for an upcoming anti-Israel protest outside of a Jewish organization, we're going to find those, you know, shortly after they're posted, escalate them up to my colleagues who are in charge of that borough, and then we're escalating that directly to the law enforcement that needs to know to make sure that our institutions have the security that they need in order to keep our community safe. One other thing that I think is critical to mention that I've seen taper off, but given the increase in COVID cases, it's feasible that for the high holidays in particular, many of your institutions may be offering a Zoom alternative or a Zoom option to in-person services, was this effort a few months ago to target institutions generally, but some specifically were looking to target Jewish institutions on their Zoom link. So they're engaging in Zoom bombing. we had a specific example where we located a Jewish funeral that we found they were attempting to Zoom bomb, and we were able to figure out the who, what, where, when, and we were able to contact them, the funeral house directly, to make sure that they were able to shut down any communications on Zoom. And so with that, I'd like to share some best practices, especially as we enter the high holiday season, and especially if things are going to be moved online, in terms of what we can do from a social media online perspective to keep our institutions safe. So when it comes to Zoom, certainly if you're having Zoom services, those links to the services should not be posted anywhere publicly. They shouldn't be posted on your website. They shouldn't be posted on your Facebook pages for your institutions. It's best if people have to register in order to receive those links. Certainly, if you can use a webinar format so that people can't engage directly with the Zoom, that's preferable. But if you want to have that sort of communal feeling even from Zoom, it's best to vet everybody as they enter. So have a waiting room set up, and to have somebody who's monitoring the chat so that should anybody get in who's not supposed to be there, you're able to remove them promptly. Also, some good social media hygiene for the institutions. Monitor them regularly. If people are messaging your Facebook page or liking it or commenting on pictures and you're not familiar with them, that's a great thing to pass along to either our CSS colleagues, again, who you'll hear from, or my team at CSI, so that we can investigate, make sure that they're not a threatening individual. Additionally, if you're sharing contact information on your social media, it should be sort of an innocuous info @ so that nobody's personal email addresses are ever going to be on a public-facing platform. And most importantly, and unfortunately, these are the times that we're in, but if you're having an event, especially if it's in person, you shouldn't post the location and the time on any public-facing platforms. It should be, you can tell the title and the date and require people to register for the event in order to obtain the specific details of the event, so that you're not having people show up who should not be there. And but again, as Mitch sort of ended with the uplifting, we have incredible colleagues, everyone on this call who's working specifically to ensure the security of our communities. And I'd like to say that we're in good hands.
Great. Okay, Mitch, is there anything more to add, you want to add, or?
No, I think we're ready for the next phase.
Great. So, okay, so most of you who are on the webinar know that the U.S. Department of Homeland Security administers the nonprofit security grant program, which funds grants to at-risk nonprofits to harden themselves as targets. So we're very, very happy to announce, after a lot of work and effort from many people, including on this webinar, that 177 organizations in New York City, Long Island, and Westchester will learn that they've won nearly $27 million in funding. And I think that's a really important measure of the commitment, both of us as a community of JCRC, a federation, and of the Department of Homeland Security, of just how deep is the commitment in very concrete dollar and financial terms. Most of us don't know about the many other programs that can benefit our organizations, and we're fortunate to have a terrific group of representatives with us this afternoon. From Washington, we have the branch chief of the Active Assailant Security of DHS Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, known as CISA. Many of us have attended the trainings over the past year, and we're all deeply grateful for the excellent guidance that they provide us with. So we also have Mo Tellab, who joined DHS in 2010. He's now Chief of Protective Security for New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And Stephen Allen, Protective Security Advisor, will share with us some of the other resources available from DHS. And from Washington, we have Susan Schneider, who's the branch chief of Active Assailant Security of the DHS Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. So thank you very much all for joining us, and we look forward to your thoughts.
Go ahead, Mo.
Mo, are you going to kick off?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, thank you to our moderator, Mr. Gideon Taylor, for having us, David Pollack, for the great partnership over the years. It's been a long 18 months for a lot of us, and I know we're all looking forward to coming together to connect in person. Part of why I'm taking this call from the car is I'm actually now connecting with some members of the community, and I'm en route to that. And so I apologize for not being at the office to take this call. So within the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the pillar of to be able to freely and safely worship is a cornerstone in our democracy. There are a few more important things that hold the community together than the ability to freely and safely do that. And so from CSI's perspective, we are happy to both provide resources to help the community inform their own physical and cybersecurity, but also learn from your community in the decades that you've spent focusing on, this issue in the United States. And certainly, look to gain from the interactions here as much as we look to provide information. You'll see that we've got really a solid group today to provide you some more information on some of our key programs at CSI. We are constantly looking to improve these tools and capabilities. We are constantly pushing new and additional resources to the Jewish community and interfaith community, and look forward to the discussion. So please, if you have questions, post them in the chat. We'll try to answer them as we go. So with that, I'm going to kind of pause here, shift over to my colleagues, and look forward to the continued discussion. Thanks for having us.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for inviting us. I'd like to say that we're real pleased to be here today. I'm a protective security advisor for New York City, and I wanted to highlight some of the faith-based community resources that we have. I'm going to start by saying a basic statement. It's always best to engage with local law enforcement, government agencies to see what's available to support your faith-based community to improve congregant and facility security. However, with nearly 400,000 congregants in the United States, not everyone has the means or the local resources to assist. That is why we here at CSI have created a faith-based community resource page and self-assessment tool, which I'm going to talk a lot about today. The link that you see there on the slide is also posted in the chat. Please go to the next slide. And this is kind of an example of how it starts out, basically a 4-step process started, conduct an assessment, implement some improvements, and then continually test and improve your security. The faith-based community resource page is designed to guide the minimally skilled or experienced user through risk reduction process. Using the page will guide you through a simple process with resources CSIs brought together to inform and make securing your faith-based security facility a little easier by demystifying the process. Next slide. And when you do go to the page, you'll find out that this is a very easy, it's interactive. So you click onto it and it'll bring up a set of questions. You're going to go through 49 questions through this module, and it's going to provide you guidance on how to improve or options to consider. But one of the first things you want to do is you want to form a team to guide your organization's security and safety. Identify your priorities, your vision. I know as you guys get ready for the high holidays, you may want to be focused on certain things. And then there may be other events, graduations, baby dedications, other things that come up through the year that you want to be focused on. Understanding the threats you face, becoming aware of the local and regional threats and concerns throughout the local faith-based communities, law enforcement information sharing communities, potential security issues, and protective measures. We do have the Homeland Security and Information HISN network, which provides a good gateway for a lot of resource to build awareness of emerging threats, as well as enhance your security and preparedness. And you can see the links there on that slide. Next slide, please. This talks about our protective security advisors. I'm one of 3 that work in the New York City area, but if you want to reach out to us for Any type of resources, assessments, training. I do have a slide at the end. We do have some training coming up right at the end of August, the first part of September. We also have scheduled an active shooter workshop right before the high holidays, specifically for Region 2. And I will have the link so you guys can get registered to that if that's something you're interested in. Next slide. The House of Worship Security Guide. In this security guide, CSI has analyzed 10 years of targeted attacks on houses of worship to improve context to the enterprise-wide security recommendations outlined in the previous chapters. The case studies reviewed are examples of the breadth of threats a house of worship faces daily, from physical attacks such as active shooter incidents, arson, or bombings to less visible cyber attacks. A house of worship should be vigilant in its security practices. Next slide. This is kind of the framework, and this is kind of where you start when you're looking to develop a plan, understanding your security coordinator, building that team, security planning team. Who do you want on the team? How are you going to set things up? And maybe even your safety team to include greeters, volunteers, first line defense, and identifying and reporting suspicious activity. The best way to mitigate a potential attack is to take a holistic approach to security. This requires assigning clear roles, responsibilities for making security decisions, planning and implementing the procedures and capabilities across the organization. A robust security plan should be tailored to the specific needs and priorities of the house of worship. And this kind of lays out, it's kind of an endless cycle where you're constantly looking at the threats, developing plans, testing them, and then as new technologies or new threats emerge, making some changes. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a step 2 in your assessment here. Conducting a security risk assessment to better understand your vulnerabilities, the opportunities for security improvements. Security assessments take many forms and are many times available at little to no cost. Contact your local, county, or state planning agencies or law enforcement agencies for an on-site assessment if available. If those aren't available, use a CSI self-assessment survey to identify the vulnerabilities and mitigation strategies. So continuing to move to the next slide. This is exactly, once you click on that interactive link, it's going to take you to this page. And then you just click the introduction, you click start, it's a Word format. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And it's going to walk you through these 5 areas here. You're going to look at your security and safety, emergency management, and you're going to have about 9 to 10 questions. We're going to talk about your perimeter security, parking and barriers, access control, entry control, and last, the closed circuit video surveillance systems. And it's very easy. Like I say, you just click onto it. It gives you a set of questions depending on what you click. It's very easy to navigate. Go ahead to the next slide. And this is an example. So when you go to question number 1, does the house of worship have a security manager or security committee to make security management decisions? You can click one of those 5 choices. If you don't have a manager, you would be at the very low, the red stage. And as you move up to the green stage, that means you're at a higher level of readiness or security. And below that, you're going to see the options for considerations. Depending on where you click on this page, it's going to give you some ways to improve your security posture or some options to consider to move forward and continue to go. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Once you've gone through the 49 questions, you'll review and complete your security assessment, and it'll print out a plan. You're going to look at all these areas, and it's going to give you recommendations, and then you can find further resources at FEMA's site and at our site on how to specifically answer maybe some of your tailored needs or security questions at this time. Go ahead to the next slide. The next step is to test your plan improvements. Make sure that you address identified vulnerabilities. Ensure each team member knows their role in securing the facility. Lastly, once you've conducted your exercise or assessment of your improvements, take time to review the findings and then move back to step 2 and continue to improve your security plans as you go through. We do have an exercise coordinator here on the region, which can help you with this once you get to this stage. And we're more than happy to come out and talk with you and maybe show you some, we even have some exercise packages that we could give you if you have a very seasoned staff, and you could walk through your own tabletop exercise if need be. Next slide. I'm going to pass it over here to Susan for the next 2 slides to talk about the power of hello.
Thank you, sir, very much. Thank you for having me this afternoon. I really appreciate the time to speak with you, and I appreciate the folks, Stephen and Mo, for allowing me to kind of take a bit of their time to speak with you. I want to talk with you about the employee vigilance through the power of hello. This is our placemat. We have another slick sheet, and then we have a larger guide for houses of worship that we created back in October of 2020. We created these to kind of assist stakeholders, owners and operators of critical infrastructure, individuals who are out at malls, at synagogues, churches, wherever you're at schools, people who are out there in the public already, who can then become alert to the signs of suspicious activities. So we thought, what's the one thing that can help individuals assess suspicious activity? And we thought it was the power of hello. So saying hello to individuals and then receiving their feedback and their body language, anything that you can get off the individual can help you assess if that situation is suspicious. And then what do you do from there? You navigate that risk, and you decide if you need assistance from law enforcement or if you need to report it to local security. And so we created this with individuals in mind who are not security managers, they don't have a lot of training. And that's kind of where we come from with a lot of our CSI products, is the individuals who are out in the public, who maybe don't have a lot of security experience, but can be the eyes and the ears of the organization, because we feel that a lot of individuals are out there and they are at the front lines and can be your first line of defense. So if you are out in synagogue, in school, out in the public, you observe, you initiate a hello, you navigate that risk, and you obtain help. And so it allows you to become proactive and adopt a level of controlled curiosity or suspicion in the way that you observe your work environments or social situations. It also requires you to have the knowledge and motivation to react appropriately by bringing your concerns to the attention of the appropriate authorities. We have translated the power of hello into, here's more information. Thank you so much. This allows you to observe, stay vigilant of your surroundings. It gives you some bullet points of different surroundings, different things to look for. You can say, hello, how are you? You don't just have to say hello, or how can I help you? How can I help you find where you're looking for? Have you been here before? It helps you tailor to your surroundings. Can I help you find an individual? Who are you looking for? Those kinds of things. As you're navigating the risk, is their clothing consistent with the weather? Are they avoiding security? Are they there after closing? And then when you're obtaining help, do you need to call 911? Do you need to gain distance from that individual? And so these are just some pointers to help you along the way. The houses of worship guide goes into more in depth for your security teams, and it allows you to have a bit more substance to these questions, navigating the risk and obtaining help. It provides more documents and more foundational guidance on doing emergency action plans, communication plans. So it's definitely a great resource. We have a website, of course, we have a website for Power of Hello. As I was saying, we have translated this document into 13 languages, a lot for we have Spanish and the Asian American Pacific Islander languages. We are currently translating it into Navajo, and we will be posting it online. I also wanted to bring up, the next step after the Power of Hello is De-Escalation. So we have 4 products that are coming out, hopefully in September. It's going through the review process. So we came up with 4 different products. It's called Recognize, Assess, De-Escalation, and Reporting. And I'll tell you a little bit about each one. For Recognize, it's identifying stressors, changes, and behavioral indicators to help you recognize the warning signs for someone who may be on the path to violence. We also on CSI.gov have a lot of resources and videos and fact sheets on the pathway to violence. So you can find out more information on what that actually means, going from ideation to grievance to going further down the pathway to violence. Our second product is Assess, how you navigate the risk when someone is escalating. It begins with awareness of yourself, precipitating events or stressors, and the situation unfolding before you. It identifies what an escalating person may look like and warning signs. The third product is De-Escalation. Individuals are encouraged to use purposeful actions, verbal techniques, and body language to calm a potentially dangerous situation. Safety is always the highest priority, so you need to know your limits and obtain help immediately if needed. And then our final product is Reporting. It's a whole product on reporting alone. So reporting concerning behavior through activating 911 or your organizational reporting methods, what and how to report, discusses reporting challenges and mitigating measures. So again, we anticipate the release in September, barring any issues with the review process. And I so appreciate your time in letting me talk about the power of hello and the De-Escalation series. Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thanks, Susan. Really appreciate all the work that Susan's done for us. I can tell you she has sent a ton of resources to Regional 2. Their teams are phenomenal. And you can see right here the active shooter webinar. That's Susan's team that will be providing the expertise during those webinars. The September 2nd one is the next one that we have coming up. Some of the other bombing courses that you see here, I would always tell anybody that's in the security or operations, probably once a year, you want to try to kind of get up to speed on some of the new bombing things that are happening. That protective measures course provides participants the foundation to identify risk, vulnerabilities to a facility, venue, or event, and identify various types of protective measures to mitigate against an explosive device, an IED. That's a good one. Some of the things that are trending right now, we are seeing some drones or unmanned aerial systems that are putting payloads on. You could imagine if one of those payloads came over your crowds, some of the damage and stuff it would do. So these are upcoming. I will provide links. I will send some more information to David on this to make sure you guys have the ability to log on to these. Additionally, the websites that we talked about and the bottom one, that's all of our team here in Region 2. If you reach out to us, if you need some help with cyber or some other outreach program, we're more than happy to talk with you. And I really thank you for your time and including us in this important conversation today. And I will pass it back over to Gideon.
Great. Well, a huge thank you to Mo, to Stephen, to Susan, not only for joining us and being with us today and giving our wider community synagogues a chance and to meet you, to see your faces, to know you, but really for everything that you do. And I think it certainly makes us in the community feel so positive and so good that DHS and that you in particular and your teams are so engaged on this issue, so tuned into it. So a huge thank you for that. And thank you for joining us. Hopefully we may have a few questions as well. So before we get to the questions, what I just wanted to do was to introduce two of our members of our CSI Community Security Initiative team. As you know, the team works with synagogues in New York City, Long Island, and Westchester. We've not only been able to share our expertise with synagogues. Hopefully, many of you have connected with us and benefited from what CSI is doing. We've also learned a lot, and we're very pleased to welcome two members of the team who are going to give us the top 10 list. So it's Terry Byrne, who is our security manager for Manhattan, Staten Island, and Liron Philby, who's the manager for Long Island. And we're fortunate I know they speak also on behalf of the whole team, CSI team. Wonderful group. Okay, Terry and Liron.
All right. So I will start, but to make it interesting, we will bounce around, Terry and me. We present those slides. Next slide, please. So the number one thing that you recommended to do, of course, is let your local police know the times, days of your services. And I will add to that also, you know, as we know, some of the facilities are during the high holidays, change places. So it's very important to make known of the specific location. If you're doing the service inside, outside, be more specific about it. Don't hesitate to invite the PD, the local police department, to visit the place, to see the changes, and even to meet your security forces. Next slide, please. Number two is preparation. So prepare your facility in all aspects. First of all, make sure all your security measures are working properly. Do you have the alarm system? And we're talking about alarm system. Also, you can try and make a test to see if it's properly connected to the central station. Make sure your cameras are working, your access control, the locks on the doors. If there's anything around the opening of the facility, like, you know, blocks or any other measure that you use to pop the door open, it's the time to take them away. If you have any unnecessary equipment outside, so this is the time to do this cleanup and make the facility neat and clean, so it will be easier for the next stages of searches. Also, make sure that your programs, your protocols, security protocols, routine are up to date. Next slide, please. Terry, goes to you.
So I'm going to cover number 3 and a few more bullets. And this is not David Letterman. It's not the David Letterman show, so these are not necessarily in order of importance. And as David Pollock points out, these are all important. And what's important? When we're inside worshiping, we want to keep those worshipers safe while they're in our facilities. And the best way to do that is by keeping intruders out. I'm sure you all recall at around noon on October 9th, 2019, services were underway in a Halle, Germany synagogue. An armed terrorist shot at the door repeatedly and set off an explosive in an attempt to enter the synagogue while those services were going on. The door wasn't breached, and in part that was because the synagogue security system had recently been upgraded. Had that door not been locked, the outcome could have been very different indeed. So what's important here, the point of importance is that your doors, your main door and your secondary doors should lock securely and be able to withstand an attack by a determined intruder. And speaking of doors, you want to restrict the number of doors that are in use during services so that they can be effectively monitored. Now, don't forget about windows, because an armed intruder, if he can't get through the front door, the next thing he's going to try to do is break the window. So they say a chain is only as good as its weakest link, right? The Halle, Germany gunman did not give up when he couldn't reach the door and began looking for another way in. So a determined intruder will do the same, and windows would likely be his next choice. So on to number 4. At some point, however, your doors will be unlocked and open as you try to get folks inside. And this is when you must be especially vigilant. No unauthorized person should be allowed to enter your facility. Everyone doing so should be screened by security staff. Now, to properly screen, you must control access. And to do that, you'll need to limit the points of access and egress. And you want to do that in a sensible manner, though. You can't just shut all the doors. You can't just have everybody in one line coming in. And you want to try not to slow down your regular visitors. David Pollock likes to say when we do these presentations that people kind of fall into 3 different buckets, right? You have your regular visitors, you have your occasional visitors, maybe folks that only come out on special occasions, and then you have people that you've never seen before. And this was a good segue that CISA went first. And thank you, Susan Schneider, for pointing out the power of hello. We think it's a tremendous tool because what it points out to people that they may not realize is that their ushers and their greeters are actually part of the security apparatus. And it's something that cops do, us in law enforcement, people in the security industry do. They know it's part of sort of screening people and filling them out. And a lot of people don't realize that's exactly what they're doing when they engage people. You're being friendly and open, but at the same time, you're kind of sizing them up. So let's go back to these bullet points. You want to limit those entrances and exits. You don't want to slow down your regular users. You got to kind of think about your building in sectors too. You want to divide it into where you want people to be or they should be and places that they shouldn't be. During the high holidays, it's probably not school, but we tell people all the time if you have a school in your building, the people that are coming in for a service or something don't need access to the school. So you're going to have to kind of think about sectors where you want people to be and other places where you want people to stay away from. Be prepared. Make sure you have ample security. You might want to think about employing NYPD paid detail. For those of you who are from New York City, you're probably familiar with it. If you haven't registered for that service yet, you better do so quick because the beginning or the vetting process takes anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. They've been very good at trying to rush things along for people that came in at last minute, but if you can't get paid detail, which I think is the best because you have a uniformed police officer in front of your door, you could think about private security, be that on or unarmed. But again, remember you have volunteers. You can use them as screeners, greeters, and you can get more advice from us. Last point I want to make on this slide is think about perimeters too. And when you create perimeters, you can use those different layers of security that you have, paid detail, maybe unarmed security, and a volunteer cadre to sort of police those different perimeters to keep people from getting close in the first place, or at least so that people can see something and say something and alert the security guards or the police to somebody who isn't acting right. See something, say something. Laurent?
Thank you, Terry. So we talked about preparation, and this fifth point is very well connected to that segment. We need to assume emergency will happen. Mitch talked about the rise of anti-Semitic incident, and our job is to be prepared for that. So our recommendation is to, and it's as CISA recommended as well, to have a plan, make an emergency plan, and the emergency plan should cover all the threats. We are actually focusing on active threats, of course, active shooter. So except of making a tailor-made plan, you have to develop a training program, train yourself on the plan, if it's by doing tabletop drills, if it's by doing a real simulation, and include all the necessary participants in that program. If you have a security team, if you have CSS on ground, if you have volunteers, if you have any other people that are participant in this program, then involve them with that process. Number 6. Number 6 is talking about the searches and actually about the threat of explosive device. So in order to prepare for that threat and mitigate that threat, the first thing you need to do is get to know your facility. Get to know your facility and clean it up, as we say during the preparation. Then you have to develop a searching program, a schedule for regular walkarounds with a designated employee to do those walks around the building, around the perimeter daily, and look for specific unusual things that are not belong there, and this is what we call suspicious objects. The best thing to do is to use people who knows the facility, custodians, ushers, that already have a good familiarity with the facility and can really recognize what doesn't belong there. Of course, if you recognize something that it doesn't belong there, automatically you have to inform the local PD if needs to evacuate people outside of the immediate area. It's not necessarily mean evacuate them outside of the building. Terry, back to you.
Thanks, Laurent. I'm not going to take a long time with slide number 7 here, point number 7. Rebecca mentioned it at the beginning. I think last year was a different animal in terms of Zoom bombing. We saw quite a bit of it as we went into the first part of lockdown. People weren't familiar with the platform, and frankly, Zoom wasn't quite prepared for the volume of use that all of a sudden they saw. And they didn't have a lot of different things in place. It was never meant for what we ended up using it for. But they've gotten a lot better at it with a lot of safeguards that they have in place. They listened to the community when things happened. They were aware of Zoom bombing, and they've done a lot to secure the network. So there's links embedded in this slide. The slides will be available online. You can look on Zoom's links. You can look at ADL. They have very good points about how to prevent Zoom bombing. And SCN has a very effective item out there that you can look at, you know, how you can set this up before you have your services. Number 8. We're a moving target, right? We, at the beginning of the summer, thought we were coming out of this. Everybody was getting vaccinated. Things were going along great. And then we had two dynamics come into play, right? We have the unvaccinated, which you hear about all of the time, that we're not at the percentage that we'd like to be in terms of the number of people vaccinated. And then you have the Delta variant and likely some other variants coming our way. So even as we sit here and prepare as we should right now for the holidays and to get our security up to speed, and a lot of people are having or returning indoors, that could change in a New York minute, as they say. So you're going to have to keep an eye on what's going on out there, and you might have to change gears at the last minute. On the last point here, if you do decide to do outdoor services, just remember that doing outdoor services comes with its own security risks and vulnerabilities. And sometimes that doesn't always come from a dedicated threat vector. It could be that you're just more exposed. There's no privacy. In New York City, taking your services outdoors very often means that you're going to have it on the street in front of or next to your synagogue. That means getting permits from the city. That means blocking off the street to traffic. And as we see happens time and again, this has been a particularly bad year in New York City for traffic fatalities. Last year when I was out and about visiting outdoor services, there were many streets that were holding services in the middle of the street, and they had chairs set up and everything. And some of them didn't even have a wooden barrier up, and they didn't have those streets secured. So you have to look at not only developing things to protect people from traffic, you also want to try to get some kind of privacy for the services too. You know, they attract attention, and sometimes they attract the attention of people that you really don't want coming around to, you know, be nosy and see what the services are about, particularly people that might have mental health issues. So we're getting close to the end here. We're going to be going to number 9 here. In the lead up to the high holidays, make sure your staff is security aware. You really, really, really got to start planning now, and hopefully that's what you're doing by being on this call today. I think CSS is going to talk about later about, you know, just being situationally aware of what's going on around you. And it's another thing, just like the power of hello, where people do it all of the time. It's part of our nature. It's part of being a human being. But sometimes where they stop is that something doesn't feel right. It makes the hair on the back of their neck go up, stand up, but they don't do anything about it. They don't tell anybody. They don't make a phone call. They don't see something and do something. You don't forget that last part. We have some links embedded in this slide too. We have some great products on our website that you can look at. And everybody who's on this call today that are participating in this presentation with us also have things available that you can look at to follow up on what we're talking about today. So in closing out with number 10, and it's not necessarily the most important, but if you have any questions, concerns, we're here to help you at CSI. You can reach out to me if you live in Manhattan or Staten Island, or your institution is located there. There's a whole team of us. We cover every borough in the city. We cover Westchester. We cover all of Long Island. Thank you again for being with us today. I hope there were some good takeaways from this. We'll see in the Q&A if there's anything else we haven't answered, and I'll turn this presentation back over to our Executive Vice President and CEO, Gideon Taylor. Gideon?
Right. Well, thank you, Terry and Liron. And yeah, I think putting it together in that 1 through 10 is great. Helps focus on so many different focus areas that we got to keep our minds on. So we're also joined today to deal with questions. We've got a bunch of questions. We've got Adam Barish, who's another part of the terrific, outstanding CSI team. He's the Brooklyn Security Manager, and he's going to handle the questions. Adam?
Thank you, Gideon, and good afternoon, everyone. Our first question says, as we are about a month away from public schools reopening in the Northeast, I am noticing an uptick in unmask our kids and no CRT campaigns in my local school district. Do you see these activities as an indicator to anti-Semitic threats, or is that too much of a generalization to assume these groups overlap in the same Venn diagram circle?
Hey, David, you want to take that?
Mitch and Rebecca, have been watching this. Rebecca, what have you seen?
Yeah, so I think that is a bit too broad of a jump to make. I think certainly if we're thinking about it as a Venn diagram, there are folks who don't want critical race theory taught in schools and who are anti-mask, vax, et cetera, who are simultaneously anti-Semites and or white supremacists, et cetera. But it's much too broad of a generalization to say that those initiatives are inherently a precursor to anti-Semitic threats.
My organization is having trouble finding a grant administrator. Can you point us to a resource?
Why don't you contact us directly at security.requests@jcrc-ny.org, and we'll handle your request directly.
Thank you, David. Right now, I just have one more, unless people want to start putting a couple in. Be happy to get to as many as we can. Right now, can you talk about banner dropping and sticker campaigns, please?
Yeah, we saw this question in the chat. This is a technique that some white supremacist groups do as a form of advertising, whether it's a sticker promoting their agenda, showing their logo, or hanging a banner over a busy highway to promote their group's name. It's something we've seen in Westchester, we've seen in Staten Island. So it's just a technique of advertising it. One group that's been doing this a lot in our area of responsibility is the Patriot Front.
Just tag on to that, Mitch. One of the things, we talked about see something, say something. We would encourage everybody who's participating in this webinar today to give us a call if you see any of that going on in your neighborhood. Whether it's flyers on your driveway, you see somebody putting up a sticker on a bus stop, and I'm talking about anti-Semitic type flyering and things like that, because this is often a lead-in to more serious actions. Some people look at it and say, that's just graffiti. We've been dealing with that forever in the city. But what we found is that very often it's newcomers into some of these organizations that get tasked with doing this. And they're kind of feeling their way around, and they sometimes move into more serious activity that, this needs to be brought to the law enforcement's attention too, because it still is considered graffiti, and it still is, albeit at low level, it still is a crime.
Thank you. Is it suggested that congregations utilize both the Power of Hello and the CSS organization? Entry point situal awareness training. How are they complementary?
Adam, I think that's a perfect transition point to the CSS presentation, which is coming next. I think they're probably best suited to answer that. And CSS, the Community Security Service, is an organization that CSI really values our operational partnership with out in the field. All of our team is working closely with their leadership and membership. So Gideon, I think we're going to turn to CSS next.
Was there any more questions? Adam, did you?
No, that was basically it.
I did see one pop up in the chat there. Did you see? I thought was kind of interesting.
Wait, I just saw something.
There's one. Did you see about the contradiction between the security recommendations on and COVID safe? The idea.
Yeah, that was more of a comment, not really a question.
I think that one of the things that you have to realize is if your doors and windows are open, which may be the only way that you can get sufficient air circulating in the prayer spaces, you're going to have to do more with security. You need guards, you need CSS, you need volunteers, people who are watching and can make sure that you still look like a tough target, and you don't look like you're wide open, but there are people there. And we also mentioned, by the way, NYPD paid detail. All of these are complementary, and we'll get to Richard, and we'll talk about the ways you can interact with all of these options in a minute.
Yeah, there is one more. Somebody wanted to know if there was any more recommendations for outside services.
We'll post that in the on our PowerPoints that are going out.
I think just to be fair to say, there's a lot of information here, right, David? And there's a lot of follow-up information that you'll receive. I think it's impossible for them to present it all today in an hour and a half webinar. So stay tuned and make sure that you're on JCRC lists.
So I think at this point, Adam, I think we covered the questions. Thank you, Adam. Thank you for all the questions. So as you've heard, we wanted to welcome today representatives from the national organization, CSS, Community Security Service. So we're joined by two people, Richard Preem, who's the Deputy National Director of Community Service of CSS, and Chuck Berkowitz, who's the Director of New York Operations. So welcome both Richard and Chuck. Thank you for being with us. And we look forward to hearing about the programs CSS has to offer. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you, Gideon. Thank you, David. Thank you, Mitch. Let me just try to get my, maybe before we start, I'm just going to give a quick introduction of what CSS is and what we can do to help you add to all the things you are already doing for your security and supported by CSI. But before I do that, let me just underscore how much we value the relationship with CSI. CSS, and I'm going to talk about it in a second, is a volunteer-driven organization. We train volunteers in security. But in the New York area, where we have a very solid presence, I think the partnership with CSI has really amplified our value add. And I don't know how much time we have, and maybe we can even give one or two examples of how that partnership has actually helped make the community at large safer. So for those of you that don't know the CSS, we are founded in 2007 by former members of the military, security-oriented Jews who were concerned about rising levels of anti-Semitism and felt that there was not enough security in place for the Jewish community. We follow a model in training volunteers that sister communities around the world have been employing for decades. Our mission is simple. It's to protect Jewish life and Jewish way of life. And in New York, our main partner is CSI. We work together on many different levels. We have weekly contact, especially if there are incidents or threats. We have a joint analyst in Rebecca. But on the national level, we work with the Secure Community Network and also with the Anti-Defamation League. And to date, we have trained over 5,000 volunteers across 125 synagogues in more than a dozen states. And these are synagogues of all denominations, from Orthodox to Reform or Reconstructionist. And we hope to be able to deliver more of our free training to as many institutions in the New York area as possible. I already mentioned the partnership with CSI. We have a formal MOU with them. We do a lot of collaboration on joint incident response. And maybe an example that I can give, for example, if some of our volunteers we have trained see something happening in front of their synagogue, and we want to report it to the local precinct, but we also want to make sure that other synagogues that are not in our network are aware of that incident is happening. We share it with CSI, and they make sure that it is shared across the board in New York. And they've also been instrumental in elevating certain cases, incidents that we've seen, to the right departments within the law enforcement community to make sure it gets the attention that is warranted. We do something similar with the Secure Community Network on the national level. We have a statement of intent and working towards a formal MOU with them as well. And we also partner with the Anti-Defamation League. So we have 3 programs, and before I go into them and sort of explain what each of them are, I just want to underscore something that was already referred to by Terry and by Liron and others, and that's sort of the value add of volunteers. And this also comes back to the question that was asked about where do we come in vis-a-vis the power of hello that was talked about earlier. We do not seek to replace law enforcement. We do not seek to replace private security. We think those are 2 crucial components of having a solid security presence around your synagogue. But there are certain things that trained community members can add to that. And one is, as a member of a synagogue, you know better what belongs and who belongs in that synagogue than anyone else. Also, when it is your family and friends that are inside, you're going to be paying attention to what's going on. So that is, I think, a crucial piece of knowledge about volunteer security. It is not the same, it is complementary, it is an addition to private security, law enforcement, anything else you can put in place. And the other thing is that the methods that we teach, they've been tested and have been deployed around the world for decades. So if something happens in Halle, Germany, and we earlier heard about that attack that was thwarted because of the right security measures at the place. What we talked about is about the reinforced door and the kind of physical upgrades that building had. And I think it's a great example of how those physical upgrades, and CSI can help with that in New York, played a big part in preventing that attack from materializing. But the other component of that is that it doesn't matter how many reinforced doors you have, how many camera systems you have, unless you have a community, members of the congregation that understands that they need to close the door behind them, that understand that they don't need to open the door for people that they do not know, that understand what suspicious activity is and why it is so important to report those suspicious activities. Those physical infrastructure loses a lot of its value. So that's why I think what we do is complementary, and we very much cherish our partnership with CSI. So the 3 programs that we have are Entry Point, Rome, and CSS Synagogue. And Entry Point is really an introductory 1-hour basic security awareness course. We can deliver it over Zoom or in person. Anyone in the congregation can participate. And we try to get 3 messages across. One is, what is suspicious activity and why is it so important to report it? The second is, what are some common sense security practices that every member of a congregation can take to keep the community more safe and secure? And the third is our flagship, or the second is and the third is explaining the value add of having volunteers help with security. That's the entry point program. The second program that we have is Roam. This is for younger and unaffiliated members of the community that want to help protect events. They want to help protect synagogues, and we train them. And for example, in the high holidays that are coming up, they're going to be helping our teams at synagogues in New York to make sure those synagogues are better protected. And the third program that we have is really our flagship program. It's the CSS Synagogue Program, and this is where we put our training to use to train members of your congregation to become a standalone volunteer security team that can do shifts during the weekly services, and that can work together with law enforcement, together with private security, and add that additional security layer. So those programs are all available for free. We're not for profit. We don't charge for anything, and we really try to push our entry point program a lot, because I think that basic security awareness is something that everyone can benefit from. It is very easy to deliver it, and if your synagogue doesn't have any affiliation with CSS yet, it's a very low barrier entry into our programs, and we would be happy to make that available to you. And with that, I want to pass it on to introduce our Director for New York Operations. We recently hired Chuck Berkowitz to become the Director for New York Operations, a former U.S. Army Ranger veteran, 20-year plus experience in NYPD, where he specialized in foreign and domestic terrorism cases. He also has a long track record with the Special Services Unit of the Intelligence Bureau of NYPD. And before he joined CSS, he retired as a detective first grade. And he will be really spearheading our efforts in New York to expand beyond the 50 plus synagogues where we already have a presence in the New York City area, to find ways to help all of you benefit from some of our programs. So with that, I would love to hand it over to Chuck.
Well, thank you, Richard. Quickly and briefly, I just want to reiterate everything that Richard said, what we heard from DHS, what we have heard from Terry about working together, working in layers, the power of hello. The CSS model is second to none. Retired NYPD detective, I believe in this model. I believe that the volunteers that we train and will train in the future, they're the ones who are going to know the community best at the synagogue, the Jewish center, the school. They're going to know it better than the private security, local law enforcement, NYPD. But truth be told, working together, that's going to enhance the security of the Jewish community, the Jewish facilities, your own specific place. It's something special. I've known Mitch for a long time, and I have a good working relationship with him, and I look forward to working with his team at CSI and enhancing our relationship with CSI. CSS brings something that no one else brings. It's teaching volunteers how to be that first line of security, how to teach them situational awareness, basics in security to help local law enforcement, paid private security, first responders in case there is any sort of emergency. I look forward in the upcoming weeks and months working with CSI to have the opportunity to speak to any and all of you, however many people would like to, a little more information on CSS. The next slide will have our contact information. I can be reached directly at chuckb@thecss.org. And again, CSS is not here to take people's jobs away in private security or tell you not to use paid detail from the NYPD. What we are here for is to enhance all that to make your facility a safer place. Thank you.
Terrific. Well, thank you. And we really look forward to continuing enhancing the partnership and the relationship with CSS. And I think as I look at the screen here of all the participants coming from different backgrounds, different agencies, different entities, all working together with as we approach the high holidays and indeed every day, I think it's certainly, I feel from a JCRC point of view, I know from our partners in Federation, and I think for the Jewish community, we're all profoundly grateful to all of you, both to your agencies, to you individually, for the commitment that clearly comes through so strongly in this in the webinar today. So before I close, I want to wish everyone a good and a healthy new year. And I'd like to ask our partner, UJ Federation. Today we joined by Nadine Kochavi, Director of Synagogue Strategy Community Resources. UJ Federation, such a key partner in all of this work. And we're very pleased to have Nadine join us and close out our gathering today.
Great. So thank you so much, Gideon. And I want to thank all of our partners at JCRC and CSI and CSS for your presentations today and for the important work that you do to keep our synagogue safe. I also want to thank all of you for your attention to the security and safety of your members, your guests, and your staff. We also know that there are times that we don't always know who belongs in our community. And we should remember that your synagogue members are quite diverse. So I just wanted to let you know, next week on August 18th, I'm hosting a webinar with 2 experts in the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And I highly, highly encourage you to come on and hear their stories. One of them is a president of Flatbush Jewish Center, who's both experts are DEI consultants who've been doing this work a long time. So as you get ready for the high holidays, I cannot stress enough the importance to really thinking about who is entering your space, as we've been discussing, and the diversity of all the people who are looking to celebrate the holidays with all of you. So I want to make sure you have that information, and I'll put the contact in the chat. The other thing is, if you don't have our Synagogue Digest, David and I try to coordinate and send him our latest information so that you're getting all of his emails. But please make sure that we know there's a lot of rotation in the last year, new presidents, new rabbis, new executive directors, that we have that information so that we can keep our information up to date. So either send it to David or myself and we'll coordinate. And with that, on behalf of UJA, we know this is a difficult time, but we know we've been here before and you can do it. And I am so, so, so grateful to this team of CSI experts and looking forward to the year ahead. David, closing words?
I thought you had the closing.
Okay, then that's it. We're done. Wishing everyone a good day.
Thank you all.
Shana Tova, wishing everyone a good, a healthy new year.
Shana
Shana Tova.